This is what I've discovered. I'm telling you, man, it's changing my life. Anytime, instead of the old days when I'd blither and blather and ear beat people with some spiritual fucking advice for their lives, anytime I'm about to do that, I don't, and I apply it to myself. So it's like if I'm about to like suggest to someone that maybe exercise is going to make them feel better, I exercise. Or if I'm like, you know what, maybe you should meditate. That's when I meditate. Instead of saying it, I just start applying it to myself. Holy shit, man. It's really fucking good advice for me.
Yeah, you're taking your own advice.
For me.
Luckily.
Not for anyone, because it's easier to get someone else to exercise than to get you to exercise and meditate. So it's like what I'm doing right now, and I'm not recommending this for anybody else, is I'm just trying to calm the fuck down. Just calm down. Stop getting so fucking frustrated. Stop being like wobbly or like unstable. Try to maintain stability in an honest way around my family and friends for as much as I can. That's why I quit drinking, and it's working wonders. It's working wonders. So it's like, you know, with this stuff, it's so frustrating because it's like, what the fuck are we gonna do? What? I guarantee Putin isn't going to listen to this podcast and be like, you know what? Maybe instead of the war, I will start blowing dudes on TV. That's not going to happen. You're right. But it's like, yeah, so that's frustrating. There's a very limited realm of control we have out there. So if it's like, all right, what do you have control over? What do you have control over? And it's like that thing you were talking about when we went out to eat. You're like, you got to put that monster in a box. Yeah. That thing, whatever your particular monster may be, figure out a way.
Keep it in the box.
Eventually, you can actually melt it down. Like, it doesn't even have to be a monster anymore. They say that you could actually, over time, the thing becomes less and less and less and less of a monster.
But we were talking about mental illness that applies to obsessing on things, which is why we can't fuck with video games. That's what the monster was for us. That monster is this like desire to like get immersed in things, and it's fucking creepy. It takes people like gamblers. They're possessed by demons, like hardcore gamblers. Did you see Uncut Gems?
No,
it's amazing. It's an Adam Sandler movie, and it's not a comedy at all. It's a fucking great. It's probably one of the best movies about gambling, if not the best ever made. It's really good. It'll give you anxiety. You'd be like, oh my God, Jesus fucking Christ. When you're watching this movie, you're like, oh my God. It's all about a gambling junkie. Adam Sandler plays it perfectly. And the movie is all about these rushes that these people get from gambling, and it just takes over every aspect of their life. Just like a fucking video game. Just like anything else, man. Things can take over your life.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. So it's like learning that and where you've been taken over, and then seeing if you can lessen your addiction to whatever the thing may be.
Yeah.
And not like...
Manage it.
Manage it.
Manage it.
Well, first, just recognize it. That's the first trick. Recognize. I don't mean addiction to booze or whatever. I mean literally like, you know, like how there's a... You know, that thing, like someone's got a difficult personality.
Yes.
And they hurt people a lot. But instead of recognizing, oh shit, I've got a difficult personality and I'm hurting people a lot, they're like, that's who I am. I'm that person who does the crazy thing all the time. That's just me. It's like, don't be that person. Recognize like you should stop hurting people.
Right.
Like it's not, and I speak as someone who like a lot would rationalize really bad traits. Is like, you know, man, that's what I'm like. And it's like, no, it doesn't have that. I don't need to be that way. I don't need to be like a shit talker, a gossip. I don't need to be someone who's like always mad at some certain person. I definitely don't need to be a person who like is passive aggressive or punishes people with anger or, you know what I mean? I don't have to be that way.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to be that way. All I have to do is start blowing dudes on fucking TV. I just like, it's funny though that you said that because it like the vision like stuck in my head. It was weird. But you know what I mean, man? It's like that's all we have control over is like, look at your own crazy fucking tyrant being, right? Like, look at your own monstrous thing that you've been pretending, that's just me, man. that's what I'm like. That's me. And play around with the idea, maybe that's not you. Maybe that's just something you're addicted to being, and you could actually stop being that way. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Habits are really hard to break, man.
But this is one of the real problems with psychedelics being outlawed.
Right.
Is that people aren't allowed to have these sort of transcendent moments in those psychedelic experiences because some people truly can't handle it. Some people, it's not for them. That's absolutely true. I agree. But for a lot of people, it is. And you can't say it doesn't benefit a lot of people. And I know so many fucking people who've benefited from it, including me. And to deny that to people, to deny that, keep that from people, I think is a real travesty. It's a travesty in our cultural development, our development as a community. It would help us develop as a community if people had some experience with regenerating their view of the world.
Yes.
And that could be available to everybody, but it's being withheld from you by people who haven't experienced it. Right. It makes no fucking sense.
So weird.
The people that are trying to keep you from doing mushrooms for sure aren't doing mushrooms. Because if they were, they would realize that the thing to do would be to spread these to everybody and to give people the chance to recognize that maybe they're under the hypnotism, maybe they're under the spell of a certain frequency. That's not the only way to live. You can live in a different frequency.
Right.
You could establish a different frequency amongst the people you love. You can establish a different frequency with yourself. It's possible. And to deny that from people just because you're afraid of it or because of propaganda, it's very anti-science. Because there's a lot of science that points to it helping people with all sorts of things. End-of-life crises. That's a giant one with people that have taken psilocybin. It's allowed them to really relax and think about existence and look at it in a completely different way. And I don't think that's available through just someone sitting next to you and asking you questions and having a counseling session. I'm sure that's great. I'm sure that counseling of end of life is great. You know, it's better 5 grams of mushrooms.
Fuck.
That's way better.
Yeah.
And it's not going to kill you. It's not, I mean, especially if we figure out a way to grow it legally where shit gets inspected, it's going to be good for you.
Dude, I bet 5 grams of mushrooms is more intense than death. Like whatever that experience is probably makes, like when you're actually dying, you're like, fuck, man, this is like so much nicer than that time I took 5 grams of mushrooms.
Or maybe it's the same thing.
Maybe it's the same thing. But
that's the DMT feeling, right? Don't you get that feeling like that's the next door? Yeah. That's like you open up the door and you're like, oh, this is life.
Yes. I mean, that is, I mean, I think that's what's really going on here is like, what happens is you get all constrict, like